Our guest this week is Dan Gillmor. He's a professor of digital media entrepreneurship at Arizona State University's Cronkite Journalism School. He's also a technology columnist for The Guardian Online and a former columnist for the San Jose Mercury News, and the author of books about grassroots journalism and the role of the informed citizen in kind of what he calls the media active landscape.
I'm not a pessimist about the long term at all. I'm concerned about the medium term. I think that the journalism business was overdue for comeuppance, and a lot of the journalists were overdue for a comeuppance. And you know, if you watch how this campaign is progressing, it's like no one ever learns. It's amazing. There are periodic little advances in how people look at things. I think it's important to note that National Public Radio just published a new comprehensive, they call it an ethics policy, I call it a journalism policy. And one of the tenets of it that I thought was fabulous to see was they reject outright the notion that writing down what two people say and publishing it or putting it on the air, if one of them is lying, they reject that as bad journalism. I think the best thing that could happen to journalism would be for all journalists to get covered, to be the topic of journalism, the subject of journalism, because it would open a lot of people's eyes. And this is not just some random complaint. This is I think everyone who had the experience understands that it's a deadline-driven, therefore flawed system, but there's some fairly endemic problems that are caused by the way it works. Yeah, so I'm happy about the explosion of new kinds of things. I'm very happy to see that there's an ecosystem coming that's starting to develop that is much more diverse, and I think in the end will be much healthier and better than, by and large, better than the one we're seeing disappear. I am insanely, wildly jealous of you to be either starting off or re-entering a field that has never had more possibilities than it does now. And that I wish I were 30 years younger or coming up soon on 40 and starting off. It would be so much fun. I would just be, I would love it. So, for all of the issues there are, I'd rather be, in most ways, in your shoes than in the shoes of any people I met at any point during my career. You do a startup, you have to focus. Entrepreneurs can do one thing at a time. That's it. You can't try and be polymath as an entrepreneur. You've got to do one thing. Everyone in this room probably has an idea for a startup. That's wonderful. That doesn't get you anywhere beyond an idea. It's doing stuff that's hard. It's really hard. And it's all consuming. I didn't work hard enough either on that project. You know, I left the office by 7 every night. Can't do it. Startups are dangerous to your relationships if you're doing it right. And you have to absolutely be in love with what you're doing, and just know that it's great, and be stubborn about it. I think it's a mistake. I think it's a tactical, smart move to use Facebook, and a strategic, potentially a strategic disaster. So yeah, but Apple is, I mean, it's the same thing with the iPad. To rely on these companies, I think, is questionable, especially when they assert the right to be your editor, which they do. I mean, is that really how you want to look? Where Apple or Facebook says, well, I don't approve of this. No. If you want people to believe in stuff that has quality, and presuming that you're going to do stuff that has quality, help them understand how you do it, why you do it, what goes into it, etc., which is part of this whole thing, is, I think, valuable to them and to you. And that's one way. I think we could also strongly encourage people to not react in knee-jerk ways to the latest thing going by on their screen. I should have actually called, the book had a bad name. I should have called it Slow News, because there's a long section about how we need slow news movement like slow food, where we have to, take a breath. But that's another thing we as providers of information can be helping people do. And partly in the way we do our own doing things. There's the cliche that it's better to be right than first. I promise you that's not the prevailing philosophy anymore. I'd like to look at the neurological research on this, on whether we're capable of doing slow news. I don't know. I don't know if human beings can do it, but we better damn well learn. And people who are doing this need to help people understand how. So that's a big factor. And get people involved. Whatever you're doing, news is a conversation. It's a cliche, but it's true.